So welcome back to the discussion of recognition of an antigen by the adaptive immune system. This is a three-part series, and in the first part we had a detailed discussion about the structure of a typical antibody molecule. Now in this section we are going to be having a detailed analysis about how these antibodies they interact with specific antigens. And the concepts that we are going to be covering, it is first of all, we are going to have a detailed analysis of the antigen binding site of the immunoglobulin molecules. And we're going to explore the various ways in which the antigens and antibodies can interact with one another and the various factors that influence this interaction. And then finally, we're going to have a look at some of the antibodies that are different from mammalian antibodies, and they can be used in a lot of various other contexts for the development of their diagnostics as well as therapeutics. So starting off with having a detailed analysis of the antigen binding site of an immunoglobulin molecule, and we know that this is known as the V region. And we also know that the V regions of any given antibody molecule, it differs from those of every other. The sequence variability is not, however, distributed equally throughout the V region, but it is concentrated in certain segments, as it is clearly seen in a construct that is known as a variability plot. So a variability plot looks something like this, and this variability plot is basically constructed by comparing amino acid sequences from several dozen heavy chain and light chain V domains. And at each amino acid position, the degree of variability, it is the ratio of number of different amino acids seen at all of the sequences to the frequency of the most common amino acid. And based on this, we basically see three hypervariable regions, the HV1, HV2 and HV3, and these are indicated in red. The H3, it is basically the most important because this is the most variable part of the domain. And these regions, they are basically flanked by less variable framework regions, the FR1, FR2, FR3 and FR4. It is basically shown in blue or yellow, and these framework regions they basically form the beta sheets that provide the structural framework of the immunoglobulin domain. The hypervariable regions are the areas that provide the true variability to the antibody molecule. So let's see its composition in a little bit more detail. So basically the hypervariable region of the light chain, it is basically taken as a reference example, and the coding region, it is indicated in red in front of you. So if this same sequence it is used to construct a flattened ribbon diagram from the basic sequence, the hypervariable regions, they can be seen to occur in loops like the ones indicated in red, and they basically join the particular beta strands together. And if the same structure it is allowed to fold as illustrated in front of you now, the red loops can be seen to be brought together to form the antigen binding regions. And now if this same structure it is represented pictorially to give a complete structure of an antibody molecule, the pairing of heavy and light chain, it is seen to bring together the hypervariable loops from each chain, which basically creates a single hypervariable structure which forms an antigen antibody interaction site at the tip of the arm. So this basically represents how beautifully the variable regions can be brought together to the tip where they can interact with the particular antigens. And one thing important at this point, it is that the regions are basically complementary to the antigen that they are produced against, and hence they are also very cleverly named as complementarity determining regions, the CDR, and we are going to have to deal with this term a lot in the later sections. So basically the CDRs they are basically specific to the particular antigens, and there are three CDRs from the heavy and light chains, and these are known as the CDR1, CDR2 and CDR3. So in most of the cases, the CDRs from both the heavy and light chain domains, variable domains, they contribute to the antigen binding site. Thus this is the combination of the heavy and light chain that usually determines the final antigen specificity, and one of the ways in which the immune system it is able to generate antibodies of different specificities, it is by generating different combinations of heavy chain and light chain regions. And this is an entire concept that is known as combinatorial diversity, and I'm going to be discussing about this in a later video. This is one of the reasons of the magic of how our immune system basically works. So now that we had quite a bit of idea about the variability that exists between the antibodies, let's see how these antibodies basically interact with their particular antigen. So illustrated in front of you, it is a little bit of an example of how the antigens they can interact with their antibody, and how the antibody it is different for every antigen that it has to encounter. So the concept over here, it is that the surface of the antibody molecule that is formed by the juxtaposition of the CDRs of the heavy and light chain is basically the site to which the antigen binds. The amino acid sequence of the CDRs, they are different in different antibodies. So two are the shapes and properties of the surface created by these CDRs, obviously. As a general principle, the antibodies they basically bind the ligands whose surfaces are complementary to those of the antigen binding sites. So if we just consider a small antigen like a heptin or a peptide, so as a rule of thumb, it will bind in a pocket or a groove that is that lies between the heavy and the light chain V domains, as it is seen in the first two cases. But however, some of the antigens like proteins can be the same size or even larger than the antibody itself. In this case, what happens it is that the interface between the antigen and the antibody it is extended, it forms an extended surface that involves the CDRs, and in some cases some of the framework region as well. And this as illustrated, it might not only be concave but can be convex or even flat. One of the other variability that exists over here in the case of HIV GP120 antigen, when it has to interact with the particular antibody, so it basically utilizes a particular loop. This basically illustrates the diversity with which the antibodies can adapt themselves for particular antigens. And one of the factors that influences the antigen antibody interaction, it is the shape and the size of the antigen. Next, the factor that determines is the antigen antibody interaction are the antigenic determinants, and an antibody molecule it generally recognizes only a small region on the surface of a large molecule such as a polysaccharide or a protein. So the structure recognized by the antibody molecule it is known as an antigenic determinant or an epitope. And many of the important pathogens include bacteria, and they basically have a surface that is made up of polysaccharides. So the antibodies recognize the epitopes formed by the sugar subunits and provide immunity against these pathogens. But there are other pathogens such as viruses, and the antibodies generated against them they recognize the coat proteins. So it is highly probable that the sites that these antibodies recognize are the surface proteins, and they will be composed of amino acids from different parts of the polypeptide chain that were brought together during the folding. And such forms of antigenic determinants are called conformational or discontinuous epitopes. And in contrast, an epitope that is composed of a single segment of polysaccharide chain, it is termed as a continuous or a linear epitope. So that basically differentiates the conformational or discontinuous epitopes to the continuous or the linear epitopes. So many of the antibodies are raised against intact and fully folded proteins. They recognize the discontinuous epitopes, and some of them will bind to the peptide fragments of the protein. Conversely, some of the antibodies raised against the peptides of a protein or against say synthetic peptides corresponding to parts of the sequence are occasionally found to bind to naturally folded proteins. And this is the phenomena that basically makes it possible to use the synthetic peptides in vaccines that aim to raise antibodies against pathogenic proteins. And these attempts have been made to develop vaccines against malaria parasite, the hepatitis C, influenza virus, HIV-1, and even against diseases like Alzheimer's disease. And this is a paper that basically presents summary of all of these different kinds of approaches. I'm going to give a link of this in the description if you want to check this out, but this is basically one of the ways with which the diversity within the immune system can be used for the development of therapeutics. So now back to the discussion about the factors that influence the interaction between the antigen and antibody molecule, and one of these factors it is the non-covalent forces that hold together the antigen-antibody complex. And these interactions can basically be disrupted by a lot of factors such as high salt concentrations, by extremes of pH, by detergents, and sometimes by competition with high concentrations of the pure epitope itself. So the binding it is therefore basically can be regarded as a reversible non-covalent interaction. So included among these are the electrostatic interactions, and these basically occur between the charged amino acids such as in salt bridges. So most of the antigen antibody interactions they involve at least one of these electrostatic interactions. So the interactions also occur between the electric dipoles, as in the case of hydrogen bonds, or they can involve short range van der Waals forces. So an interesting aspect over here it is that high salt concentrations and extremes of pH, it basically can disrupt the antigen antibody interaction by weakening the electrostatic interactions, or the hydrogen bonds. So this principle it is basically utilized in the purification of the antigens by using affinity columns of immobilized antibodies. So another practical application to be used in developing techniques for further utilization in science. Interactions included other than these are the hydrophobic interactions that occur when two hydrophobic surfaces they come together to exclude water. And in some of these cases, the water molecules are trapped in the pockets at the interface between the antigen and the antibody, and these trapped water molecules, especially those between polar amino acid residues, may contribute to binding and hence to the specificity of the antibody. So the different interactions can determine the specificity of the interaction between the antigen and the antibody molecule. Other than these, hydrophobic and van der Waals forces they operate over short ranges and they serve to pull together two surfaces that are complementary in shape. So electrostatic interactions between the charged side chains and hydrogen bonds that basically bring together various components, they basically also strengthen the interaction overall. So these are the various electrostatic and basically forces that operate to control the interaction between the antigen and the antibody molecule. So the final factor that controls the interaction between the antigen and antibody molecule are the steric constraints. So the basic concept here it is that even if the antibody molecule have a high affinity for the antigen, say an intact viral particle, even in that case the antibody binding may be prevented by the pattern of arrangement of the antibody molecules. So let's consider a study that did basically just this. They used the West Nile virion as a test subject, and they studied the interaction with neutralizing antibodies that are the E16 that are produced to neutralize them. So indicated in the first diagram, it is basically the structure of the surface glycoprotein, and it basically has three domains. And over here what you basically need to know, it is one domain that is a D3 that is of interest, and this because this is the site where the antibodies bind. And based upon the structure of the virus, 180 sites were identified where the E6 antibody could bind the virus. But the crystallographic and the electron micrographic studies showed that even with an excess of the E16 Fab fragments that they used, only about 120 of the total 180 D3 domains of the E were able to bind to the E16 Fab fragments. And it was later on proposed that the result was because of the hindrance with the presence of one Fab blocking the ability of the other Fab to bind to a nearby E protein sites. And basically treading on this, it can be expected that the steric would become more severe with intact antibody rather than just the Fab fragments that were used in the studies. So if complete antibodies were used, they would further reduce the ability of the antibodies to bind to their particular antigen. And another aspect that was revealed from this study, it is that the Fab bound to the D3 region using only one of its antigen binding arms. So this indicates that the antibodies may not always bind the antigens with both antigen binding sites, depending upon the orientation of the antigen being recognized. And both of these constraints will eventually impact the ability of the antibody to neutralize its targets. So these aspects are very much important when we are going to deal with the development of vaccines against these particular compounds, and all of these factors and all of these constraints between the antigen and antibody interactions must be considered when designing particular therapeutics or even diagnostics. So far our discussion has been limited to antibodies that are produced by humans, and these in general are similar to most of the mammalian species, including mice. However, some other mammals can produce an alternative form of antibody based upon the ability of the heavy variable domain to interact with an antigen in the absence of the variable light domain. And such a phenomena has been seen in the serum of camels. They contain an abundant immunoglobulin material that is composed of heavy chain dimers that lack their associated light chains, but they basically retain the capacity to bind to the antigens. And these antibodies are known as the heavy chain only IgGs, and this property it is shared among other camelids including llamas as well as alpacas. So not only this, but some fishes as well, like the cartilaginous fishes, they also produce antibodies that are known as a new antigen receptor, that have a heavy chain only antibody in which the variable heavy domain, it is spliced to the CH1 exon rather than the CH1 exon being spliced out as in the case of camelids. And this basically suggests that the development was a result of a convergent evolution that occurred some time during the evolution. So the ability of the camelid variable heavy domain to interact efficiently with the antigens, it is a basis for the production of so-called single chain antibodies. So this simplification of using only a single domain of an antigen recognition has promoted the recent interest in using the single chain monoclonal antibodies as an alternative to the standard monoclonal antibodies. So this can basically revolutionize a diverse area and possibly open up a new era of diagnostics and therapies that currently use monoclonal antibodies, and in the future they may use single chain antibodies for the diagnosis as well as for the treatment of a lot of different sort of diseases. So this concludes our discussion regarding the antigen antibody interaction. So just as a summary, first of all, we considered a detailed analysis of the antigen binding site of the immunoglobulin molecule. We saw the variable regions and the framework regions. Then we basically saw that the antigen and antibodies, they can basically bind based upon their structures and a lot of other factors, including the steric hindrance that influences the interaction between the antibody as well as the antigen. And then we basically followed on to see other types of antibodies that had different sequences, that had different structures, but they can still be of use to science if they are utilized and modified accordingly. So this was all for today. In the next section, we are going to be dealing with some other specifications of recognition of the antigens by the T cell receptors, and that is going to be the last part of this recognition of an antigen. So for those contents, stay tuned and we'll be right back.